think I'm broken, stripped in my shadow on the floor, like the broken bones inside my body. Oh, I'll be stronger than before. You gotta take it day by day. Keep moving forward no matter what they say. And when the leaves try to steal your faith, keep pushing through them, 'cause there ain't no other way. If you wanna get stronger, we don't break, no we don't break. Stronger, stronger, no we don't break, no we don't break. Stronger, stronger, no we don't break, no we don't break. Stronger, stronger, gotta take it day by day. If you wanna get stronger.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda, Director of Events and Experiences at Step Up, and I'm excited to welcome you to our International Women's Day Town Hall presented by Comcast, NBC Universal. Thank you so much for celebrating with us today. We invite you to share where you're joining us from in the chat box below. Today's conversation will focus on the theme Break the Bias. You'll hear from thought leaders in our community, and we hope you'll join us in creating a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. I'd like to thank our host committee of past Women's History Month speakers, Michelle Aragon, Veronica Areola, Jillian Barr, Kate Benson, Kimmy Kolk, Anna Flores, Tara J. Frank, Kilyani Narayanan, Danielle Sanchez-Witzel, Liz Dennery Sanders, and Louisa Shipnuck-Jones. Thank you for your continued support and for joining us. I'd love to share a few friendly reminders with you all before we officially get started. We'd love to invite you to turn on your video if you are able. Even though we're not physically together in person, we'd love to create that feeling, and it supports us in creating a space of community. Please keep your mics on mute until you go into your breakout groups. Feel free to add your positive comments and reactions in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you need anything at all during this event, please reach out to our Step Up staff member, Morgan, via the chat box. We would like to take a moment to thank Comcast NBC Universal for serving as our presenting sponsor of our International Women's Day Town Hall. NBC Universal understands the power of media and technology to make meaningful connections. As a company uniquely positioned to educate, entertain, and empower, they are committed to bringing together diverse communities, inspiring customers, audiences, and employees to make positive impact. And now, I'd love to introduce our keynote speaker. Trisha J. Taylor is responsible for developing and executing diversity, equity, and inclusion, talent development, and talent management, workforce initiatives and practices at the enterprise level across the NBCU portfolio, and consulting with the corporate DEI team, functional business leaders, HR business partners, as well as other stakeholders aligned with NBCU DEI workforce talent and culture initiatives. Please welcome up Trisha.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'll say thank you for the beautiful intro, including the J in Trisha J. Taylor. My mother would be proud. That's a connection to her. But thank you and welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from today. Thank you, Step Up, Comcast, NBC Universal, for the invitation to participate, and welcome you all to the annual Step Up International Women's Day Town Hall. This year's topic, Break the Bias, is connected to both professional and personal passions of mine, specifically one to help people better understand and connect with themselves and each other. Biases stem from a desire in our brains to make sense of things quickly. It's natural. And we all do it with a number of things throughout our day without even noticing. However, when that shortcut in our brain is directed towards people, especially people that we know very little about or have limited experience and low exposure to, those shortcuts can lead us to stereotypes and an even more unfortunate occurrence, prejudice, and discrimination. So if it's natural and we all do it, but it's flawed and can lead to negative assumptions and associations, what can we do? Well, first, there's something seemingly obvious to acknowledge first. That's probably so obvious that our brains fast forward past it. We all see and experience the world differently, uniquely, through our own lenses and lived experiences, which means that people who hold different race, ethnicity, gender, ability, education level, income level, geographic location, generation, and so many more identities, again, different from ours, will naturally have different perspectives and experiences. And while we often talk about empathy and taking a walk in a mile in someone else's shoes, we can never truly succeed at that. But though we can't succeed at that, there are a few other things that we can do to break bias and build empathy and understanding across those lines of difference. Organizations like Step Up, relationships with friends and mentors or peers, teachers, community leaders, all provide incredible spaces and opportunities for you to gain exposure and connect with others with similar and different identity layers and dimensions than your own, and help build that empathy and that understanding. A lot of times, though, we think about our own comfort and our discomfort, and getting to know anyone or anything that isn't familiar to us activates that. Or anytime that we feel uncomfortable, our brains go to this place of, well, when and where do we fit in, or don't we? Even virtually. We consider how we look on camera. Do we turn our cameras on? How is our hair? What are we wearing? How do we sound? And our brain starts to get caught up in all of those questions and all of those feelings. Those are parts of our identity and lived experiences pushing to the front. And they can make the world feel brighter and wider and more inclusive if we find that sense of belonging, or darker and narrower and less inclusive if we focus so much on the differences. In the spirit of breaking bias, building self-confidence and empathy, I invite you all to do this next activity with me. It's going to start with a deep breath. So I'm going to ask you to push your shoulders back, inhale, and take a deep breath. And if you feel comfortable enough to close your eyes, feel free to do that too. I'm going to use the next minute or so to ask you to do a reflection on yourself and your identity, and answer these questions in your mind as you listen to me read them. Keep breathing, and I'll start with the question. Number one, what parts of your core identity do you think of most often? Is it race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, age or generation, income level, ability, or something I didn't mention? And then I want you to think of, maybe after hearing that list, what are parts of your identity that you think of least often? Which parts of your identity are connected to your greatest strengths, make you feel unique and grounded, or connected and smart, or capable and strong and creative? Are there any parts of your identity that make you feel like an outsider? How do you believe other people see you or your identity? Do you think their view of you matches your own? And last but not least, are there any parts of your identity you wish others knew more about? If you closed your eyes, you can open them now. But I want you to think, how did that feel? Were some of those questions easy to answer? Were some of them difficult to answer? Especially when all of those questions were about you. Now I'd like you to flip it and think about that concept of walking in someone else's shoes, or at least attempting to understand. Do you think this exercise would be easy for someone else? Do you think they would have things that they'd want to share or discuss after the reflection? What are the things that you would share with them now that you've reflected, and that they might share with you that could possibly open new paths to understanding, break down assumptions, stereotypes, biases? If you think that that's an opportunity that will do some of those things, then great. That's what I'll ask you to do. Today's concept for International Women's Day is Break the Bias for 2022. And that's what I'll ask you to keep in the corner of your mind and take away with you for the rest of today and the rest of the year. First, a period of reflection on your own identity. And then thinking about any of the biases you may have, but adding to that a new sense of curiosity about others, who they are, the lives that they've lived, and what you can learn from them that help change those biases into positive affinity biases and help build more inclusive and connected relationships. I want to thank you all again for your time and attention and the invitation to participate. And I'm very excited and happy to turn it over to Step Up CEO, Dolores Morton. Enjoy the rest of the town hall.
Thank you so much, Tricia, for getting us off to such a powerful and strong start and setting the stage for the conversation that we are going to have today. It certainly was enriching for me to participate in that exercise, so thanks again. I am going to jump right in to introduce the thought leaders who are joining you on today's panel. First is Anna Maleka Tubbs. Anna is a multidisciplinary expert and scholar on current and historical understandings of race, gender, and equity. She is the author of The Three Mothers, a look at how the mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin shaped a nation. Next, Pearl Savat. Pearl is the head of demand generation and brand marketing at Visible, which is a Verizon subsidiary, and the first all-digital wireless carrier in the US. In her role, she oversees all aspects of brand, creative, influencer marketing, social media marketing, integrated marketing, partnerships, and media strategy for the company. A native of Tehran, Iran, Pearl is also a steadfast champion for empowerment and mentorship. And finally, we have Chief Kristen Crowley. Chief Crowley has over 26 years of experience dedicated to public safety. With her appointment on March 1st, just last week, Chief Crowley becomes LA's first female fire chief and the department's first openly gay leader. She will be sworn in on March 25th and will take office on March 27th, all during Women's History Month. Anna, Pearl, and Chief Crowley will be joining Tricia and I in a conversation now, and we look forward to all our guests sharing their thoughts and questions, both via the chat box during our panel, as well as in breakout groups that will follow the panel. So let's give all of our speakers a warm welcome in the chat. I see you already have it going. Thank you. I'm going to start with a question for everyone and give each of you an opportunity to answer, and perhaps we'll start with you, Chief Crowley. What does break the bias mean to you, and why do you think this is a timely theme for International Women's Day?
All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's so good to see everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't often get to see all these wonderful faces in front of me. Majority of women. I'm sure there's some guys on the call, but this is something different for me. So that's very inspiring. So thanks again for the opportunity. So we talk about breaking the bias. I think, and I can speak specifically, obviously, from the fire service as a whole. We have a long way to go, right? But the first steps to this is recognizing it, right? So I can say internally from the Los Angeles Fire Department, we've actually just dipped our toe into it. We're starting to grow in this arena for the right reasons. We've started some training. So all of our members did actually go through some implicit bias training, but there's so much more to do. And we have so much more to learn about one another and what each and every one of us bring to the table, what value we bring to the organization. So I'm really excited to be stepping up into this leadership role and really kind of turning our focus towards the people side of our department and looking to grow it out and to just support one another, include one another, show a real sense of equality in how we make our decisions. And I'm truly honored to be here.
Thank you, Chief Crowley. Anna.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be on this call. Happy International Women's Day. I would say, and I'll add that I think we need to be paying attention to the histories that have led to our biases. And the more we can have an honest view of what's happened in the past, and we can look at that for healing and look at that for progress, the better we will be as a nation, as individuals. So I'm all about learning about our history, not being afraid to confront the ugly past that we've all either endured or participated in, and how by seeing that from an honest perspective, we can actually find healing and find progress and really finally break those biases.
Break the bias. Thank you, Pearl, and then I'll ask you, Tricia, to round us out with that same question.
Thank you so much, Dolores. I will just echo what these ladies said. Be hyper aware of your surroundings, be self-aware, recognize that intentional allyship matters and it's critical in the workplace. So pay attention to how your female colleagues are getting sort of treated. Are they being interrupted in meetings? Step in and pivot the conversation back to them. If you hear, I hear this thing come up a lot where a female who's highly qualified for a role get passed over because they don't have executive presence, right? So this is another example of intentional allyship. Raise your hand and ask the hiring manager, what does executive presence mean? And I promise you, no one will have an answer to that question, right? So just being hyper aware, but in an intentional way and understanding the root of it. Like why is, for example, something that I learned, I'll admit just last week, was that bias is alive and well and highly prevalent in female-led industries and businesses. So understanding the root of the problem and really digging into it, those are all key elements that I know we'll talk about today.
Sounds good. Tricia?
And I'll just add to that, there's so much to be said about, like Anna said, the history, and Pearl said, digging it apart and open, that we understand and can spot a lot of times the output, right? The results of bias. So we can hear in people's questions or qualifications for women. We can hear in some of the choices or decisions that really keep women in certain places and out of other places. But the more that we can understand the origin, the definition, and build the map for ourselves and others, we can get better at pointing out not just what it is, but why it exists and how we act on flipping it or getting rid of it. And so there's a lot to be said about, okay, what do I know to be true? What do I think to be true? And then what do others think is true? Because there's another piece of breaking bias that is sometimes people are operating off of something that is all they've ever seen and all they've ever heard. And part of it's going to be an education of like, there are other ways to think of something or go about it, but knowing first how to listen for it, I think is a great.
While you have the mic, Tricia, we're going to get a little bit personal for a moment. And I'm asking everybody this question, so you get the first shot at it. But I want everyone to be thinking about this. But can you share a time when you were stereotyped or discriminated against, and how did it make you feel, and how did you move forward?
I think that's a difficult question for me, and I imagine that I'm not the only person, because there become all of these parts of who I am that I'm always questioning. Is it because of this? So you can't tell on screen, which is one of the things I love about virtual environments. I'm going to tell you a big secret. I'm 5'1.25". And so tying to what Pearl said about executive presence, there's something naturally about walking into a room as a shorter person where you are in charge of the room, but people almost look over you. And then I am a Black woman. And so those are other identities that are often not seen as the leader of a space or a room. So I enter a room and have to almost negotiate that in my mind. If I feel overlooked in that moment, is it one part of who I am or how I show up, all of the parts of who I am or how I show up, and kind of push through that. I am in this room for a reason script in my brain, but that's a very real and active experience that I've had for my whole life and still have today. So do I think I have faced and currently face discrimination? Yes. But can I pinpoint it? No. So I'm always kind of mitigating what I think other people think or see and how I show up and managing to make sure that they see, to the degree I can control, what I want them to see.
That was a really great part of your reflection. One, what do you find, which parts of yourself do you find most powerful, do you lead with? And when I was reflecting on that piece, the next question after that is, what do you think people see? And so sometimes the things that I think are awesome about me are also the things that I worry that when other people see me, that take away from my credibility, that diminish me in their eyes. I thought that was such a powerful reflection. Chief Crowley, the same question. Can you talk about a time when you were stereotyped or discriminated against, and how it made you feel, and how did you move forward from that?
Sure. So I just think of a unique environment where the fire service, you can see I'm in uniform, right? So I already have an external look, and all of us have familiar uniforms. We all wear the same thing, but it's interesting. You see the biases. It could be internal within the fire service or external within the community. Let's say we're running a call. I'll give you one quick example. I've been in a leadership role for a while as a chief officer. So chief officers have gold badges. So just by our external appearance, that is a position of power, a position of authority. But yet I would show up on calls and run the whole entire incident and then walk through maybe the fire scene and start to, try to put pieces together. And either community members may just think, they would look at my assistant or my driver, who was a male, and they would go to him for the questions. It was something as simple. He would just go, she's in charge, she's the boss. And so okay, I didn't know. So just something as simple as that is always just an interesting example where that's that natural bias of, well, how can she be in charge where, actually I was. So that happens quite often within the fire department. Another real quick example is driving the fire engine. When I was an engineer, I was a person driving the fire engine, rolling down the street, lights and sirens, and people would be shocked. Here I am. You don't see a lot of female firefighters out there, and I'm a driver. But the really cool thing was, I cannot tell you how many "you go girls" I got from the sidewalk, little girls hitting their moms, going, "Mom, look, 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 look." And just from me being, in that position, and I didn't even know I could be a firefighter, and being out on calls, it is so powerful. And you just think about just shattering that bias of, yeah, you can be a firefighter. A lot of hard work and effort, dedication. Absolutely, it's here for you. So those are just a couple of examples of, on both sides of the spectrum where I've kind of felt that before.
Right, you're not climbing the literal ladder by yourself and pulling it up, but you're climbing that ladder and bringing the next generation of women leaders along with you and up that ladder too. Anna or Pearl, either one of you want to take that question?
Yeah, definitely. I'm so inspired by all of you. That answer, I was just smiling the whole time, thinking of these little girls watching you. That was so, so amazing. I would say for me, and I'll get real personal with it, my partner, my husband, has been in kind of the public eye for several years. We've been together for 10 years, but he was the mayor of Stockton and the youngest mayor of a major city in American history, which was so incredible. And I was so often looked at as if I was just his partner, that was my biggest accomplishment in my life, that I had married, gotten this wonderful husband. And people would call me a trophy girlfriend, trophy wife. They would say these really terrible things to my face. I'm a Black woman. I have a high-pitched voice. There was this notion that there was no way I had my own mind, or that I, met him where I met him. We met in undergrad. We met at Stanford University. If I wasn't in Stockton, there was pressure that I wasn't supporting him enough, when instead I was getting my master's and my PhD at the University of Cambridge. But there was no sense that there was possible that I was pursuing my own path, that I had my own passions, that I might have my own career. And I think so many women relate to this notion that when we walk into a room, whether it's that, I don't know, maybe we like to dress with pink colors, and then somebody assumes that makes it that we shouldn't be taken seriously. I've been told multiple times that I should lower my voice. And instead of somebody changing their bias or their understanding of what a voice means, that I need to somehow be closer to what it means for them to have strength or to have intellect. When instead I always say, actually, I'm just going to show you that you should probably change your assumption. All of us have so many different ways of showing up in this world with different strengths and different weaknesses. And we also have all of these parts of our identity that make us who we are. And we shouldn't have to change that just to fit this notion of who the leaders and who the powerful people are in our nation. That's just the hegemony operating. And I want to break that as much as possible. So shows up a lot for me, but especially in relationship to my husband.
Oh, great, great. Thank you for sharing that. And Pearl, why don't you close us out on this part of the conversation before we go into some real specific topics?
Sure. I don't know if you ladies see me shaking my head as each of you were talking, because every time you feel like you've heard it all, you realize that you haven't heard it all, and I'm like, oh my God. I'll give two specific examples. So in my previous role, the industry that I was in was very, very male dominated, and my two counterparts, both of them were gentlemen, and one of them was the CEO of the company. The three of us were sort of like, on par from a leveling standpoint. And one of them, who was the CEO of the company, and again, my equal, he constantly made references and called out how much I made at the company and my salary. And the catch here is that I actually knew that he made more than me, even though we were equals, but he constantly made references to it and said that I made a lot, right? And that absolutely made me feel less than. And another counterpart of mine, who was another gentleman, he would constantly take the ideas that my team and I represented, marketing ideas, take them and run with them. And those things always constantly made me feel, created like this sort of really delicate situation for me at all times. And I became really sensitive to it and really resented it. But I will tell you, it taught me one of the biggest lessons in my career, which is the value of self-endorsement and being the biggest champions for ourselves and our careers, and talking about our wins and talking about, as loud as possible on that mic, the value that we drive to the business, the shareholder value. So while it made me always feel like really bad, like why is this happening? I wasn't used to it. It also taught me a lot about how I should sort of continue to show up. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm seeing lots of head shakes, eye rolling, head nods in the room. So I think we all have, I can identify with the parts of your stories that you've shared so far. While you have the mic, Pearl, can you share how you are taking steps towards inclusivity and advocating for gender equality in your workplace?
I'll tell you with this one, I think this was one of the questions that I grappled with the most, because our CEO at Visible, who's an absolute powerhouse, is a woman. Her name is Angie Klein. She talked about breaking every single biases and the stigma that comes with being a female CEO, especially, has broken every single one of them. Check, check, check. She's a visionary, a powerhouse, has a firm point of view, ensures that you feel heard and seen in every single meeting. So it sort of gets trickled down with us from the top to bottom, right? And like, that's the difference between my previous role and the one that I'm in now, which is, the organization is led by a woman who's a powerhouse. I work in the marketing department, mostly women who are drivers, very competitive in a good way. And we really celebrate it and we champion it. I've never been in a meeting where one of my counterparts, who's one of the heads of product and who is very, very outspoken and extroverted. I've never been in a meeting with her where someone has said she's too abrasive or too aggressive or too outspoken. Be quiet, you're talking too much. And I think it speaks to the culture at Visible and the fact that we're really cognizant about all of those things and making sure that we create equal grounds for everyone. All of our reviews, everyone's treated equally, right? So like, that bias is also taken out. So I have nothing but good things to say about the way that we treat equality at my current organization.
Well, thank you. You know, it's such a, I appreciate that it's a cultural, it's embedded in the culture of the organization. And so much of corporate America in particular is a white male dominated culture. And it takes those shifts, and those shifts don't happen overnight. They happen over time. And so it's great. And having a woman at the helm actually does help to shift that. And so another woman at the helm is Chief Crowley. You are starting a new role as the first woman fire chief in Los Angeles history, and the first openly gay leader in the department's 136-year history. Do you feel pressure? And if so, how do you balance the pressure that comes with opportunities when you are the first to do something?
Right. So do I feel the pressure? Yeah, you absolutely feel the pressure, but you can either let that just stunt you and stop you, or you can push through it and take it on. So that's really been kind of my strategy, right, of dealing with each and every promotion and opportunity that I've created. That's what I'm looking for. So I understand what and wholeheartedly shoulder that burden of command. And that's what it's all about. And that was really the force behind me of why I wanted to promote and push through the ranks and build the credibility and build the respect for all the right reasons. And everything literally has led me up to this point. And you talk about having a woman, for the first time in the history of our department, let alone, the fire service of a department this large. This is all about being in that position of influence with zero ego, right? There's zero ego behind how we make our decisions from this point forward. It's all about how we're going to take care of one another and bring in the inclusion and equity across the board within our department. And my hopes are that this spreads out throughout the fire service as a whole. So that pressure, I'm going to take it in, and I have throughout my entire career, but it's just like all of you have as well. We push through it, and now it's time to, start to create that space where no longer from this point forward, zero people will be marginalized when it comes to what they bring to the table and why they're here, and how each and every one of us brings value beyond just being big and broad and I can throw a ladder up against the building. It's about connecting with the community that we serve. And when we can connect with the community, we can better be able to fix their issue when they call 911 or on their worst day of their life. And that's why we're here. And that's why I'm taking this role on wholeheartedly.
Thank you. I think that to lead with zero ego, I think I saw a lot in the chat. People are really resonating with that concept. Chief Crowley, thank you for sharing that. Anna, your book tells the stories of three extraordinary Black mothers who raised three Black leaders: Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and James Baldwin. And in the book, you talk about the strength of motherhood and how these women push their children towards greatness. I'm going to give you a two-part question, and you talk. Just go for it. But what inspired you to tell the story? I know when I read the book, I was struck by just the very premise, how frequently women are left out of these narratives of some of the most prolific figures in the making of nations. So that was something that really struck home with me as a Black mother, as a mom. I don't know if my son is going to be a prolific leader one day, but he's going to be prolific wherever he is.
If you have a mom, I have no doubt.
But that is bias in itself by not telling that part of the story. And so two parts: what inspired you to write the story? And the second part is, how can we counter this type of bias in storytelling?
Yeah, when you sent me this question ahead of time, which I'm so grateful you did, I was like, how am I going to answer that quickly? But I will do my best. And then I'm going to share a link for my TED Talk if I'm allowed to do that, because it'll get more in depth to the storytelling piece of it. But I wanted to tell this story of these three women because I had an incredible mom who always talked to me about the importance of motherhood. So she was a lawyer. She advocated for women's rights, both in the US as well as abroad. And my siblings and I grew up with this privilege privilege of traveling across the US and the world following her work. And she would say, pay attention to the way women are being treated, pay attention to the way mothers are treated, and that will tell you how successful this community and the society is going to be. This was her whole notion, and she could relate everything back to the treatment of motherhood. In addition to that, when I started my PhD, I was also incredibly inspired by Hidden Figures and Margot Lee Shetterly's work in producing this book that went on to become the film, because I was frustrated that this was the very first time I was hearing these women's names, that it was so clear to me that the erasure of their stories was intentional. This was not a mistake. It's not that someone said, oops, we forgot to tell you. It's actually Black women who were the brains behind NASA all along. Our bad. It was very intentional to sweep their stories under the rug because it didn't fit our notion of who the heroes and who the leaders of our country are, this white cisgender patriarchal notion, male cisgender patriarchal notion. So I said, I'm going to be somebody who finds other hidden figures. I'm going to find other Black women's stories that we should have known all along. And I'm going to pair that with what my mom always taught me, that we need to pay more attention to mothers, that mothers are being overlooked, that they are not being appreciated, that they're not being seen in the essential nature of the role, and how important they are to our society. So I decided on Alberta, Bertus, and Louise very intentionally. I wanted to play with the patriarchy. I knew more people would pick up this book if it had the names MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin on it. So I said, you know what, that'll be my hook. The patriarchy will be my hook. More people are going to pay attention to this book, but that also means that more people are going to walk away knowing 3 Black women's names, Alberta King, Bertus Baldwin, Louise Little. And it is so clear yet again that the erasure of them in these men's life and in their presence was intentional. It was not a mistake. You have to work hard to separate these mothers from their sons' stories. It is so clear that everything that these women did long before they had children is what inspired these men to do what they were able to do. And it's just time that the world know their stories and know their names. So I hope you all do pick up the book and enjoy it, and just feel seen as well. Those of us who have felt erased, those of us who have felt disrespected. It was a personal journey for me as well to claim that I also mattered, that my story mattered, and all of our stories do. So that's why I wrote the book. And I think these are kind of the steps we need to take in terms of storytelling. We are very inspired by the way we represent things in our books, by the way we represent things in our movies, but even the stories that we tell each other on an interpersonal level. Once we start to shift that, more change can follow. Policy will follow. So I make this claim in the TED Talk that, for instance, things like affordable childcare or universal parental leave, we're having a hard time passing those because on a national level, the stories we tell about mothers make it seem that they don't matter, that their stories are not important, that we can take them for granted, and therefore we're voting that way as well. So we need to shift the stories so that our policy can follow.
Shift the stories and break the bias. Thank you, Anna. And I think someone did add the link to your TED Talk in the chat. So that's great. And do pick up the book. It is a compelling read, not one you want to put down. And I am not her on her publishing team or anything. It really was one of those books in 2021 that stuck with me. So anybody wants anything else from my reading list, I'm glad to share. Tricia, you posed some great questions around biases and identity. What parts of your core identity do you think of most often? And, I don't know if it's your height. I too am just under 5'2", so I understand that. But what are the parts of your identity that you think of most often? And which parts of your identity are connected to your greatest strengths? And this question's for Tricia.
Thank you. I love this question, and I love being able to answer it after Anna because, one, I now clearly have to call my mother when we finish this session. And two, I believe strongly in the power of storytelling. And so I think what I love to talk about any opportunity I get the chance to, if you can't hear it in my accent, it's that I'm from Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn gives me a lot of who I am, but even the location in Brooklyn, because I come from West Indian immigrant parents. And so the concept of who I am and how I present myself more often than not is going to be seen by others as a Black woman of a certain stature. And I realize that, but I accept that. But when you give me the opportunity to tell the story, I I will tell the story from a place of, I'm from a certain place in Brooklyn where all West Indian immigrants congregate. It is literally where everything about me was born. Even where I'm sitting right now is technically my dining room table, but I'm 2 blocks away from the college campus that my parents met on. And so when I say that there's a very steep story in my identity, everything that came from it, from the sense of education and hard work and success that came from my parents. My father was a teacher in Trinidad. I started my career as a teacher here, technically in Long Island, but we are very intertwined with all of our origin stories. And as much as we try to run or create ourselves, they follow us. So for me, when I pull my story out and I tell people who I am, I always start there. I am a Black college educated woman, but that is because my parents met at that college campus and put Trinidad and Jamaican values together and then pushed that fully. And even another secret I'll give you is that's what you see in my name, is that there's a little bit of the Trinidad and the T's and a little bit of Jamaica and the J's, and I can't escape that as part of my identity.
I love that. Thank you. A little bit of the T's and the J's. I had not made that connection. That's great. I'm going to go back to some questions for all of the panelists. Generally, anyone can answer. Tricia, maybe you, since you've got the mic already. What are some tips that you can share with us on how to drive change or navigate the change, even if you're not in the driver's seat?
Find the people who are, that are linked to your story and helping you figure out what the next step is. I'm going to go back to Anna a little bit, because thank you for sharing the piece about your husband, and everyone in the chat also linked some of these things together. The concept of storytelling, sharing the story changes the policy. I hear some of his campaign, and I don't even know him, in what you said. And I think that that's part of it, is surrounding yourself with people that you are connected to and inspired by, that have a different seat and platform, and then being able to connect those dots and elevate that platform. There's a little bit of, it's a big change. How can I do it all by myself? And I don't think you can or should. It's really finding the people, significant other, family member, coworker, leader, that's aligned in some way, and then building on that until it's enough to move some stuff.
Thank you. That's great. That's a real tangible tip. Pearl, how about you? Do you have any tips that you can share with us on how to drive change or navigate it?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, really at Visible, Dolores starts at day one. So a couple of examples here. When we're reviewing candidates for different roles and opportunities, it's 100% based on skills and both years and depth in experience. Not once have I ever talked about, well, we need to bring a woman for this role or a male candidate for this role. There have been times, like recently, we identified a gap with women in our executive suite, right? And that's something that we've cared for now over the past couple of months with a couple of hires. But it always starts with what are this person's skills and what can they bring to the table, and what are the tangible results that they've driven for their previous organizations. And then another example that I'll share with you that I do with my own team is I ask, especially the women on my team, how do you like to be recognized? How do you like for your work to be called out in a more sort of internal but public setting, cross-functionally? And some people have told me, don't ever call me out. It like puts me in a weird place, or no, I want my work to be celebrated and sort of rewarded in a more external manner. Or another thing that I do is that I will tell my team, hey, in this meeting, I'm going to call you out. So it's a little bit rehearsed on the background. I'm going to call you out so that you can provide your thought leadership and recommendations. So I'll go back to this word intentional. Be intentional about how you interact with your team, direct team, vertically, horizontally, and really understand. Someone said earlier here that we're all different in how we prefer to be treated at work, how we prefer to be spoken to, how we prefer to show up, right? So really get into the nitty-gritty of it and have active conversations that you can then action upon.
Great, thank you. Chief Crawley.
Sure. Sure thing. So just thinking about change, from I think a lot of our perspective, it has to be very strategic. right? Usually change just doesn't happen, right? Especially if you want it to be sustained change. So I think that has to come into the strategy of as we put our thoughts together, and let's say individuals, you're looking towards, well, what's my next step and who do I need to reach out to? You have to be very focused in your approach and have a strategy behind it. And from the leadership arena, that has to be very purposeful on our ends, meaning we work so hard to get in a position of influence. It's for nothing if we don't actually manage to change and have a sustainable plan moving forward to ensure that we have diversity, equity, and inclusion across the board. It's just not going to happen by chance. So I think we have to be very thoughtful and focused.
Thank you. Thanks. Before I let you respond, Anna, I just want to say to our audience, if you have a question that you like specifically directed to one of the speakers, if you would chat that to Morgan or to me, we can see if we have time to get your specific questions in, but we'll also have maybe opportunities to ask questions in the breakouts. Anna, same question. What are tips that you can share on how to navigate change, even if you're not in the driver's seat?
Yeah, I think that change is overwhelming sometimes, really. Like, we think there's so much in the world that needs changing, and that is true. And that can feel just exhausting. You know, if you're somebody who is committed to social justice and you're committed to fighting the bias and you're thinking, oh, it's everywhere, what am I supposed to do? I think it's helpful to think of a couple of things that you personally are really good at. What are your kind of talents, your gifts that you can bring to this larger team that we're a part of, that Trisha was mentioning? Like, it's not just us that are fighting this, but what can we all do that's unique? So something for me, very personally, I wanted to take what I learned in the academy from these degrees, but make it accessible, make it something that people want to come and read, something that welcomes people into the conversation. Having spent my life in so many different places and having been the new kid so many times, I connect with people on levels that maybe others don't have the same comfort with. And so I often say, I don't think it's a person of color's job to educate a white person on oppression, but I am actually willing to do that. That's something that I uniquely feel I'm willing to take on for the team. That I don't think that women are supposed to educate men on these things, but through my skill of storytelling and through my ability to connect across whatever lines, these kinds of skills that my mom also taught me through her work, that's something that I am going to contribute. I want people to feel like they can learn about race and gender and the history that has brought us to these places of inequity, so that we can move forward and have conversation and find healing and find progress, as I've mentioned. So what is it that we each individually feel from our background, from the people who raised us, from the cities that raised us? What is it that we can contribute to this larger fight to find more equity, to find more justice in our societies, and not feel like we have to attack it all at once, because then you may feel stunted, you may feel stopped in your tracks, you may feel like it's just too much and it's too overwhelming. And I'd rather just not know about all of the ugliness in the world, but instead think, what are the teams that I can join? Who can I be in this fight for all of us?
Thank you. Thank you. I have one question from the audience. And, you know, I have enjoyed talking with all of you. You have been inspiration for me today, and I'm going to take a lot of the messages you've shared with me, and I'm sure others in the audience will as well. But for you, who is a thought leader or a trailblazer that you admire? What qualities do they have, or actions that they've taken do you admire or find inspiration in? Trisha, why don't you start?
You must have felt me reaching for the unmute button. I want to say Stacey Abrams. And I feel like people are going to hear that and they're going to attach very much to groundbreaking Black women in politics, leading, and all of those things are true. I'm going to add just an additional layer that I found out about her by the pleasure of being able to hear her speak and then access to her book. And I don't know if the group knows this, but she also writes stories under a pen name. And that becomes such a wild and unique identifier to me that speaks again of this concept of like the different layers of our identity, that it's inspirational to me to have someone be successful in different parts of who they are in different lanes at the same time. because I think there's a lot of climbing to be good and proving self and acquiring all of the things that can seem all consuming and maybe neglect some of our creative explorations or pursuits or other parts of ourselves. And I love the concept of being able to look at someone who has accomplished such great things in one part of their life and then hear about a gotcha, that there's a pen name and the story that made her want to be successful is so cool and interesting, and that you can be all of the things without toppling over. It's just an aspirational goal, period. And she's one of the people that represents that for me.
Thank you. I too love Stacey Abrams and have read the books, and actually needed a thesaurus while I was reading her most recent book, While Justice Sleeps. And I thought I had a pretty big vocabulary, but like, wait, what does this mean? But absolutely endorse her books on my shelf. Quickly, we're running out of time. My staff has given me the wrap up note. But Anna, could you share someone who inspires you, a woman who you find in whom you find inspiration?
Honestly, I mean, maybe it's just because I have been speaking about them for several years now, but I'm going to answer with Alberta King, Berta Baldwin, and Louise Little. The inspiration that these women gave me in just studying them, knowing their stories, and the fact that, again, their sons could not have done what they did without them. So just to give a quick teaser into these women's lives, Alberta King was raised by the leaders of Ebenezer Baptist Church. She believed that faith was always intertwined with social justice, that you could participate in marches and in boycotts. She was one of the very first members of the NAACP. She was all about nonviolence, except she just didn't call it nonviolence. That's the only difference between her and her sons. And then thinking about Louise Little, this radical activist. If you're somebody who likes these kind of like badass women activists who will stand tall and stand their ground no matter what, this is Louise Little. She faces off with the KKK, literally, when she's pregnant with Malcolm, stands up against them. She believes that you need to keep your head high. She's all about Black independence, Black self-sufficiency. And her story has such a tragic moment when really kind of through white supremacy, she's put away against her will for 25 years of her life, but then she goes on to live another 25 years. So this is just like this inspiring story that we all should know. And Berta Baldwin, she was a writer. She loved the power of words, and she would use these words to help people around her to find the light and find love in their life and to confront pain and confront the hatred. And she then later gave birth to 9 children, one of whom was James Baldwin, and she told them that through their work and their writing, they could change the world. This is what I'm talking about. I am so incredibly inspired by them, and I think you all would be too. And just thinking of all the stories that we don't know, and the stories that are being kept from us, why shouldn't we know these powerful stories? Why have these been swept under the rug? So any of the stories that are hidden, those are the ones I want to know more and more about.
Great, thank you. Pearl.
I am going to go with the women on this call. First and foremost, each and every one of you are doing incredibly difficult work each and every day. Chief Crowley, I'm looking at you because you happen to be on my screen. I'm completely blown away and honored that I'm having the opportunity to get to know you. And then I will also say my first boss, Pat Kingsley, and my current boss, Angie Klein, whom I mentioned, both of them were our leaders in heavily male-dominated industry and opened doors for many, many women, including myself, in both of the industries that I've worked with. And I am visionaries, firm in their approach, tireless, and I am truly inspired by them.
Thank you, Pearl. And Chief Crowley, you get the final say today.
All right. So I'll keep it on kind of the micro level, just thinking about the women that have come before us and that we can all reflect back, just who have impacted our lives on a personal or professional level. They say that, you can see it, you can be it. You can take it one level even further. If she can see her, she can be her, right? So it's very powerful when you can see and respect the trailblazers that have come before each and every one of us. Within the fire service, there's some horrendous stories of how the women were treated back in the early 80s, and there's so many parallels on so many levels that we're all talking about here. But for me, it was the women that have come before me within, our specific department that really kind of carry that torch. And we look at where we are, I'll be the 19th fire chief in the history of the LAFD, 156 years for the first. And this is a huge step forward for us. So I'm very inspired by each and every one of you and all of your stories. But I also want to always keep that very close to my heart of the women that have come before us that have taught us very, very important lessons. And we need to keep pushing forward to make it better for everybody.
Thank you all so much. I have about a dozen more questions that I could ask of this panel that has been so inspiring and insightful, but unfortunately we are out of time for this part of the conversation. So let's give our panelists some appreciation in the chat. And before we move into our networking session, I'd like to invite Step Up Southern Region Board Member Kim Schwartz and Step Up Ambassador Lindsay Perez to share how you can take action today. Thank you again, Anna, Chief Crowley, Pearl, Tricia, thank you all for sharing your time with us today. And Kim, you can take it from here.
Great, thank you, Dolores, and thank you to all the panelists. What an awesome hour that we all just spent. I'm so happy and honored to be here with you all today. As you've witnessed, Step Up believes all girls are able to define and pursue their dreams of success on their terms. That's why we provide structured programs and focused support to help them identify their unique life and career goals. We help ensure Step Up teens and young adults know the steps they need to define their own path to success. Today, we're gathered in honor of women and girls everywhere. If you're new to Step Up or not yet a member, we hope you'll consider becoming a member of our community to support Step Up's transformational programming. Join in honor of International Women's Day today. Giving is easy. Just grab your phone, scan the QR code on the screen. It will take you to Step Up's membership page. Memberships start at $75, and next month the price will increase. So today's the day to take action. If you're already a member, we invite you to make a special gift today to help us celebrate this important day. Give a heart emoji or tell us in the chat if you're joining or renewing today. I renewed my Luminary Circle membership this morning. Step Up members have a passion for empowering girls and a commitment to mentorship. As a member, you have access to our community, events, and opportunities to mentor. I am passionate about being a Step Up member because it is so rewarding to be part of helping these girls realize they can do anything. Sharing in new successes with them, like through the experiences I've been honored to host in the past, and witnessing the increased confidence, empowerment, and drive towards their future. Now, I'd like to invite Lindsay to share more about her experiences participating in Step Up.
Thank you so much, Kim. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay, and I'm a Step Up ambassador who participates in our next Step Up mentorship programs for young adults aged 18 to 23. So being a part of Step Up has helped me in terms of both career and personal development. Step Up provides programs such as the Luminaries Career Coaching Program, in which I was paired with a career coach that met my career interests for 3 months. I enjoyed this program so much that I'll be participating in it once again, starting very soon. I'm very excited. Step Up also hosts experience shifts like Kim just mentioned. And here I had the opportunity to shadow a marketing company based in LA for 2 weeks. This opportunity allowed me to dive headfirst into an industry that I've always been interested in. And overall, I believe Step Up has granted me with the community built off of support for both my professional and personal lives. So thank you so much for allowing me to share why I love Step Up so much. We hope that you're inspired to take action today.
Awesome. And as an added incentive, Step Up is excited to share some breaking news. Can we get a drum roll, please?
Step Up is excited to announce the launch of our very first ever mentorship app powered by Cooper, the mentorship app that was brought to life by the help of our partner, Accenture, and Step Up board member, Kim Schwartz. Thanks, Kim, for all your support in making this happen. Let's give Kim and Accenture a big thank you in the chat. So the mentorship app will be a virtual place where you can connect with mentors and peers from across the country. It's an opportunity to make connections and get access to resources, content, and even more. So Step Up members get access to the mentorship app today, and the rest of the Step Up community will be invited very soon.
So join Step Up as a member today and consider participating in our new app. Step Up members will be given information about the app and other ways to make an impact all year round. We can't wait to build this community with you.
Thank you so much, Kim and Lindsay. We are so grateful for your support. And also thank you to our panelists, to our moderator, Dolores. We're so grateful for all of your presence today. So now we're going to go ahead and move into our networking breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. And so I'd love to introduce you to our breakout leaders that will be leading your session. We have Allison, Marnie, Roseanne, Ellie, Kimberly, Dolores, and Morgan. All right, we're ready to go. We'll see you in a few. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope you enjoyed your breakout groups. We're just going to wait a couple more seconds to get everyone to join us. All right, amazing. Well, thank you all so much. We hope that you enjoyed your breakout groups. We want to share an upcoming event with you all that we hope you can attend. So we invite you to check out our calendar at suwn.org/events to join us for our upcoming events. We have one listed here, the Blueprint, powered by Visible on March 22nd. We really hope you can join us. And again, your engagement in Step Up is so transformative and makes our impact possible for our amazing network of women and girls. And one last reminder that we want to share with you all is in honor of International Women's Day, if you'd like to support our partners that are giving back today to Step Up, you can check your email for additional details about our partners, but we will also drop the link in the chat if you'd like to support. Again, thank you all so much for joining us, to our speakers, host committee. We really appreciate you being here, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Let me